Welcome to Radical Responsibility, the podcast dedicated to ridding the world of blame and shame, where we explore the issues you care about from a unique perspective. 100% ownership for each and every circumstance we face in life, day in and day out. Hi, welcome to the Radical Responsibility podcast. This is your host, Felice Mall. In today's episode, I'm having a conversation with energy medicine and quantum science expert Sue Morter, a chiropractor whose father was also a chiropractor and who really founded the field of energy medicine. And so we're going to dive deep into the potential of understanding neurobiology, understanding our own brain, and really at the quantum level of energy medicine in order to really reshape our brain and reshape our own future and destiny at the deepest and subtlest level. And so this is really a deep episode, and what she shares and just what comes across in terms of her presence and her ability to sort of manifest this incredibly positive energy. So listen in to this conversation with Dr. Sue Morter. Thank you. I'm really happy to be here today with Dr. Sue Morter. Welcome, Dr. Sue.
Thank you so much. It's a joy to be here. I look forward to seeing where we get to go today.
Me too. We're really thrilled to have you be part of this summit. So I'm going to share a bit of your bio, and then we'll jump right into the conversation. Sound good?
Sure.
Okay. So international speaker, master of bioenergetic theory and quantum field visionary, Dr. Sue Morter utilizes the embodiment of high-frequency energy patterns to activate full human potential. Through her seminars, retreats, and presentations, she illuminates the relationship of quantum science and energy medicine, elevating human consciousness into life mastery. Dr. Sue is the USA Today bestselling, #1 bestselling LA Times, and #1 Amazon bestselling author of The Energy Codes, the 7-step system to awaken your spirit, heal your body, and live your best life. She is the founder and creator of the globally taught coursework, The Energy Codes, a multi-level body of work on personal and spiritual development. Dr. Sue also created the Body Awake, RYT 200 certified yoga program, and is co-creator of the bioenergetic synchronization technique, or BEST. She served on many professional licensing boards and is also adjunct faculty at the Michigan State University Medical School. Michigan State University considered one of the top 100 universities in the world. Dr. Sue hosts Gaia TV's Healing Matrix as co-host of Your Year of Miracles lifestyle training. And you have such a breadth and depth to your work. And I think people are going to be pretty clear why we're thrilled to have you be part of the summit. You've been recognized for your outstanding achievements as an honor member of the Transformational Leadership Council. In addition to founding Morter Health Center in 1987, she is the founder and visionary of the Morter Institute. The Morter Institute for Bioenergetics, an organization committed to teaching individuals self-healing techniques with an inner wisdom-based approach to life based on quantum science and higher consciousness. So, wow.
Hey.
So with the breadth of your work and so forth, it's kind of hard to know where to start, but let's start here.
Okay.
So can you explain to us what the term user-friendly quantum science means and how it relates to rewiring the brain for both healing and transformation?
Sure. The reason I call it user-friendly is that, there's so much depth to quantum science, quantum mechanics, et cetera. And sometimes the average individual is they want to dabble into it because they've heard that there's some amazing, really kind of earth-changing realities that quantum science is unfolding for us. And so I try to draw and extract things forward that people can relate to and to truly make it relatable for someone to be able to recognize that some of our old beliefs about science and what is real and what is true and what is solid and what is tangible need to be updated, because for the last couple of 100 years, actually, we've been really leaning into a new definition of what reality is. And so the idea of relating that to energy medicine and how it affects us is that basically what quantum science is showing us is that we find what we're looking for. That when scientists set up the equipment to test if the tiniest particles in our physical world were actually particles or if they were energy waves, if they set up the equipment to measure if it was a particle, it would test as a particle. And when they set up the equipment to test if it would behave like a wave, it did. And so the answer was kind of yes. So what that means is that when we study particles tiny enough, we start to recognize that they are under the influence of the experimenter. They are under the influence of the observer. And so when we are observing something, we are actually kind of creating it as we're observing it. And so I kind of work with this level of these little packages of energy that we call photons that have an influence on electrons and an effect obviously on atoms and molecules and then cells and tissues, et cetera, that it really kind of lends itself for us to recognize that there is a system at play that is determining the arrangement of our physicality itself. And consciousness plays a role in that system of great significance. So if we are believing that we are unable to heal, or that when we are contracting this type of a diagnosis, that our prognosis is XYZ because that's all that's ever been known to happen in this type of situation, we are sort of paving our path down that road to experience the perceived outcome even before we give ourselves a chance to get there. So I working with the energies of the body and the consciousness that moves those energies in such a manner that allow people to start to feel and experience themselves differently. So I, for instance, have only ever used energy medicine in the way that I'm describing as my own health care. My father was a pioneer in energy medicine, and so we were raised with these kinds of understanding. He was very interested in this quantum science idea. And so I've never gone to the doctor and taken an antibiotic for an ailment in order to heal it. Just by working with the energies of the body and rearranging and shifting them, really allowing the body to be the self-healing system that it is designed to be. But if we're not taught about those things, we just don't know about them. And so I'm just trying to hold a little light, in a corner of the world that says, there might be additional approaches to having some impact on our own health that most of us weren't really raised understanding. So.
Well, a couple of follow-up questions here. I want to come back and connect that to the title of our summit, Rewiring the Brain. But first of all, just a little background with folks around quantum theory and so forth. So, quantum mechanics, quantum physics theory has been around since the 20s, I think, 1920s, 1930s, some of the really famous physicists. And it's real science. And yet it seems like almost mainstream science chooses to just kind of almost ignore it on a certain level. More reductionistic science, relativistic science has been very helpful in creating a lot of things and understanding a lot of things. But it almost pretends that this world of this energetic matrix that we're all part of is not there. And from what you were saying, one of the assumptions of more reductionistic science is there is this objective reality we can measure and so forth. And from what you're saying, whatever reality is, it exists more in a continuum of subjectivity and objectivity. You can't really separate the two.
Kind of an interrelationship that we observe something, we have a response to that, then we project something, and then we observe, it molding and shape shifting. It's sort of like if on just on a practical level, if someone goes into a conversation anticipating an argument, the chances of an argument happening are pretty great. If they go into the conversation anticipating a solution, there's a way, they're going to find the openings and work through it in that way. It's that on a more condensed level of the scale of the spectrum, even when it comes to our physical well-being and the circumstances that happen in our lives. But it's very similar. Like we create where we're coming from. It's more about the come from than it is where we're headed.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the reasons why I love the emerging interdisciplinary field known as interpersonal neurobiology. Dr. Dan Siegel, one of the leading theorists and practitioners of, because it really is. That's where our life is, and everything's in that interrelational field. So let's talk about rewiring the brain for a moment. So you're working at this more energetic level, but has there been research that shows, obviously you're working kind of at this energetic level, and it shows up as positive outcomes for people, improved health and well-being, transformation, and so forth. But I assume in the process, if we do the research, that is actually changing the brain over time.
It does, and the research does show this. And so, what I love about it is that if we think about what built the nervous system in the developing embryo, it was an energetic system that did so. There's an electromagnetic communication system. Something was in place allowing two eyes and a nose and two ears and a mouth and to come into, this organized structure in a systematic way. And that is referenced as innate intelligence or universal intelligence or source or, the divine or however we reference it. There is something in place that develops, that really sets the template in motion for the development of the nervous system. And so if we work with the electromagnetic energy system that built the nervous system, we can have an influence on how the nervous system operates. We can have an influence on it. If it built it, it can shift it, it can change it, it can have an influence on it. It is primary over the nervous system and the endocrine system and the hormonal system, the digestive and the respiratory system. These systems of the body can collectively be held by this master system. And that master system is what I'm referencing as this electromagnetic energetic intelligence, if you will. And so what I'm doing is directing people's attention into certain areas of the body. Number one, because we are typically oriented externally. We're not built to be oriented externally, but most of us are functioning with an externalization of our references. We look to the outer world to see, am I okay? How am I doing? And am I safe? And is this going to work? Instead of really referencing internally to our inner wisdoms and our inner knowing and our inner knowledge and our inner ability to heal. And so once we start just one of the Eastern cultures, 8 things that they determine were the most significant things that an individual could do to develop higher consciousness, to become truly awakened to their capacity and their potential, is a term called pratyahara, which means to withdraw the senses to the inner system and to the inner realm, rather than just being dispersed into the outer world and caught up in the manifest world and letting that determine who we are and how we're doing, et cetera. But to learn to truly withdraw the senses inwardly, to be able to magnify the messaging that is happening there. So what we know is that there are billions of bits of information bombarding our system every millisecond. And that is information. Those impulses of energy are perceived as information. And we are 10 to 100 to 1,000 times more sensory, depending on the organ or system, than we are motor. So we are a sensing, perceiving system that is here gathering that information and then interpreting it and doing something with it. And we're either doing something, productive and proactive with it, or we're ignoring all this guidance that is coming in, and we're operating as an individuated, separate self that is having to operate only on logic and our 5 senses to figure out what we're supposed to do and how we're supposed to operate and what's next and what's safe, et cetera. And so what I'm doing is teaching people to withdraw the senses inward and allow those billions of bits of information that are bombarding us all over the body, to the little antennas that epigenetics is now teaching us are constantly receiving information and reporting it to the inner workings of the cells of the body. And that's actually what's telling the cells of the body what to do, whether to produce the chemical that they are built to produce or to withhold at this point is not determined by the nucleus of the cell. The brains of the cell are actually on the surface. So we're gathering this information and it's telling all these little antennas what's going on. We're producing a chemistry based upon that. Those chemicals are neurotransmitters. They are the endocrine system. They are signaling to the brain, telling us what to do or not do. And so we want to be able to be masterful and conscious about that rather than it just happening as a knee-jerk reaction, because the environment that we're filtering that messaging through is greatly determined by our mental activity, our belief systems, what we see and deem as appropriate and not appropriate. And so we either miss half of it or we misinterpret a portion of it, and we end up giving knee-jerk reactions to things that aren't necessarily conscious and intentional in the way that they could be. Over time, those kinds of patterns set up neurosynapses a habit, a pattern, a way of being that become our go-to, our autopilot. They start to truly influence the subconscious because they've been around long enough. And now that we're subconsciously being driven by patterns that aren't really serving our creative genius because they're so busy serving our fight or flight responses for survival based upon, our come from. If we're deciding that we're not safe, no matter if there are billions of impulses telling us, here's what to do next, if we're not even paying attention to how that is running through our system and giving us the guidance that is there, we're out here writing stories and drawing conclusions that we're not safe. And so that we have to get busy, providing some sort of protective mechanism. And all of that is energy that we could be spending on, coming up with creative genius ways of operating on our planet and working together and all the ideas that we don't seem to have time or resources to come up with because we're so busy defending and surviving.
Wow.
That's a lot. I know, but it's kind of this continual thing.
Really it really expands our sense of who we are and what's going on. And there's a couple of follow-ups here. So I think, first of all, just in terms of this, term we're using for rewiring your brain, which is meant to be an analogy because the brain is not like a circuit board. It's not just, set. There is a sense of neural pathways and all that. But even our understanding really from, the deeper sciences today is that what we think of, really even the activity of the brain as well as anything we would think of as mind is really something that kind of emerges out of that neural activity. And it really operates more as a flow. And rather than just seeing all these like signals going this way and that way, it's more like this symphony of waves of and so when we're moving from one mind state to another, one mood to another, one way of being to another, it's really it's this energetic flow. And, just to ground this in the science, again, my colleague, Dan Siegel uses the word energy. I always said, people think energy is like some woo-woo concept. It's not woo-woo concept. It's science. We are, as you said, we're electromagnetic beings. We're bioelectric chemical magnet. We radiate energy. I mean, you can actually use some kind of sensor hooked up to the brain and power a little light bulb. We're electric beings. And so since science doesn't really have a good definition of mind, the one he proposes is a flow of energy and information within and between. In other words, within and then in the interrelational space, right? So, we think of ourselves, we always think in such reductionist way, in mechanical ways, like we're kind of these mechanical machine-like beings. Right. But really, it's a much deeper, more profound kind of energetic reality as you're describing.
Indeed. I even see it like the mechanics, the physicality of us is the caboose on the train. Mm-hmm. And that actually way up here at the engine, we are pure energy. And that energy, we know this about energy. We know this about physical matter, that it's compressed energy. So if we have energy and we start compressing it, eventually it creates physical matter. That's what all physical matter is, including our physical bodies. It's just compressed energy. And so it seems to serve us well to study the energy instead of studying the caboose. It's like, if we really want to know where the train is going, let's get up here and work at the causal level instead of working at the caboose, trying to kind of rearrange the furniture on the Titanic as it's going down, right? It's like, that's not exactly where to be paying attention. So it kind of begs the idea that possibly mind is creating body, not body creating mind, that the brain is being created by this energy system instead of the brain creating an energy system. I know when my father first started studying about this, that we felt that the neurological activity generated an electromagnetic, anytime there's electrical activity in the body, it generates a magnetic field. And so we thought that the electromagnetic field was a byproduct of the nervous system's function only. And it is true that is created, but it also begged the idea that if we really look at the larger picture of this, that the energy is creating by compressing itself into the physical dimension, into the physical world, the energy is creating the matter. And then the matter functioning has a byproduct of additional energy. So it becomes self-regenerative in that way if it's functioning the way that it was built to be functioning. And so I kind of look at the mind as, this larger kind of a cosmic mind, if you will, a larger mind than we tend to think of as our own, having our own access to the mind field and utilizing our abilities to analyze or deduce or to strategize or to create, but that it's really a reflection of something, that we are really a reflection of something much greater.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And what you point to there is part of that kind of East-West divide, because Western science, still really hasn't moved off the position that whatever mind or consciousness is basically an epiphenomenon of the brain, and when you die, that's it. And Eastern science is always really, and yogic science has been more the place. No, this world of matter, including our body and brain, is more an epiphenomenon of consciousness or source or the larger energetic field. And, I've interviewed a lot of neuroscientists for summits, and even the ones who are, pretty inner-oriented, contemplative practitioners, the best I can get out of them is maybe both and. It's hard to be a credible neuroscience and really start, because it sounds like you're verging into metaphysics, at least within the boundaries of current, kind of mainstream science. But I'm really with you on that. And to you have to ignore so much data to think otherwise. I mean, all the inner work over the years with depth psychology and the collective unconscious and archetypal psychology, where is all that if there isn't some larger field of consciousness and energy that we're participating in and manifesting from? So another thing I wanted to follow up on was, you mentioned this, the Sanskrit term for going within, one of the ways, what was that term again?
Pratyahara.
Yeah, I think it's from the Vedic tradition, right? So coming within. So one of the more modern terms, and I use a lot in the way I teach meditation, is interoception, internal perception, interoceptive awareness. And by going deep within it, we can train our mind and meditate on, focus on any of our sense perceptions. But the body, for me, is a very direct portal into attention stabilization and then profound states of awareness. And as you're moving from gross physical sensation to subtle, and you're really getting into the energy body, then subtle mind and being, right? And the pathway is to enhance interoceptive awareness. Now, part of that, and what you begin to experience, in my experience, is, all the different systems in our body have different vibrational kind of flows. We have our brain waves, we have our heartbeat, but also all of the internal organs, the glands, they all have their kind of periodicity of their vibrational rates, and, even at the cellular level. And it seems like the more we kind of, through these practices, allow the default mode network to quiet a bit, and we're dropping into deep interoceptive awareness and really into beingness, it seems like those different systems begin to cohere, and you begin to tap into what I think is a pre-existing, but then maybe also we enhance our access to it, but that we perceive as a kind of flow, a palpable flow that's very healing and nurturing. And I wonder if that speaks to, how you would describe it, or you can relate to that at all.
Definitely. This is where I love to work. This is it. Because in this place, it's undifferentiated. It's less divided. It's more refined and subtle. And if we refine to a great enough degree, we truly find the common ground through which each of the cells of our body and the systems of our body, they share. It's a common ground that they share. It's the foundation from which they continue to differentiate into their specialized expressions of our physical wholeness. But if we recede back far enough, we find this place of union where they share this common ground. And I truly feel that this is the place of the great union, or the reunion, that is referenced in the seeker who's wanting to find that place of non-duality, not from an intellectual standpoint of weighing out the pros and the cons and meeting in the middle, weighing out the positive and the negative and meeting in the middle, but truly a place before which all of that differentiation took place. And if we can become conscious at that level of refinement, which requires a lot of pratyahara, this interoception, and being withdrawn into the subtle realm. And if we can train ourselves, and we can, to do so, we can truly come and awaken at this level of union, then we can come forward out to the surface of life and engage while not losing touch with that space of origin, that place of origin. And by doing so, we are inclined to the both and instead of the either or. We are inclined to being embracing instead of abrasive. We are inclined to dissolve the resistance and to find the common ground out on the surface of life because it's our come from. And those are those that are able to go into potentially conflicting circumstances and find a way that serves all, that there is a win-win in the situation, not a win-lose as the only option. And when we operate this way repeatedly, we start to build the neurocircuitry to support what we're doing. It's just like riding a bicycle. We develop the habitual ways, the patterns that allow us to just get on and do this. And as we develop this common ground come from in such a manner, it allows us to engage and to utilize our neurocircuitry in a manner that serves this unity consciousness, if you will. And a byproduct of that is it becomes our default mechanisms instead of our default being, let me survive and let me get mine before you get the best of me and that kind of thing. We default to, oh my gosh, look how the human mind tends to operate, and celebrate the moment that we catch that in real time and just don't go there and choose to go in another direction with the circumstances that are in front of us.
Wow. So powerful. And so this deeply integrated level of refinement that you're mentioning, people talk about getting in touch with source or whatever, we can think of that in lots of different terms, but I love going into the body in this way because we're really talking about, going into that deep, subtle energy field. And it is incredibly, the more we're in touch with that, it is incredibly nurturing and healing. And even if we can keep like one toe connected to that, it changes how we're showing up in the world, how we experience the world. But I also wanted to ask you, we have a lot more trauma awareness today and the impact of trauma in people's lives, and that's really a good thing. But there is that level of our being that is actually untouched by the trauma. I would say the being level we're talking about. It's not to say we may not need to do work at a more outer relative level, a healing work, but being able to touch into that deep level is profoundly healing because it is untouched by all that. Would you agree with that?
I 100% agree with that. And in fact, I feel that when we do go inward, instead of seeking this connection to source as up there, over there, out there, right, but to realize that source compressed itself to create the physical being. And so source is also in here. It's in there, not as the individual separate ego self, but the foundation beneath those layers. This place that we're speaking of today, I feel is exactly this untouched realm, this version of us that has been here, forever. It is always going to be here, and it is right now participating in being human. And it also doesn't have to be that, and that it is this eternal existence on the deepest level of our being. And so when we are able to touch that, we are able to heal trauma more readily because we have a different reference point for our identity. If my only identity is the one who's been traumatized, and that's all I have to work with, it is a lot more difficult to heal the traumas that I have been through without additional resource. And so when we work with patients and clients to get them to drop into this more subtle, refined realm of self, they now have additional reference to tap into when it's time to heal. It's almost as if to say, who is the healer? Who's doing the healing? And if it can include the untouched one, then of course our capacity to remember the truth of who we are before and during and after any trauma or abuses that have occurred, we start to get in touch with the version of us that is unwavering. that is purely present. And under those circumstances, I have found with my patients and clients and students over the years that they begin to embrace the trauma rather than try to get over it. They begin to be able to look into it as, wow, what did this contribute to my awakening? In what way did this serve me? In what way am I actually grateful for it happening, even though it was so overwhelming and beyond what my circuitry could normally sustain or handle or manage at that time. The more I build more neurocircuitry from the perspective of the untouched one, the more I can see that the role that this trauma that happened in my life is actually playing in awakening me toward my greatness, truly the magnificence of this eternal reference. So things start to take a turn. Not that we're minimizing or belittling in any way, because those traumas were what they were to the individual that as they occurred. And as the individual awakens to a greater degree or matures in their spiritual context or their energy being, even from a quantum science standpoint, the more able they are to hold the space with what really happened instead of the emotional reaction spinning them into a frenzy of repeated fight or flight, buttons being pushed or triggers being triggered, rather dissolving the triggers, dissolving the buttons so that we don't perceive what happened as the intense trauma that we originally perceived it. We see it, but we actually have additional perspectives on it because we're looking at it from a different realm, a different version of self.
Yeah, and absolutely. When any of us are kind of really stuck in the throes of the results of trauma and maybe very identified with it. I mean, the ground is always self-compassion, and we would all want to radiate compassion, but we're not dismissing or belittling the impact of anything on anyone's life, but we would hope somehow or another that at some point anyone could be introduced to or find their way into this deeper level in this pathway to accessing the profound depth of who and what we are, which has all these capacities for self-healing, and where we begin to realize that life isn't happening to us, it's actually happening for us on a profound level, and that even our most challenging situations, and this may sound really weird for a lot of people, but they're showing up as our teachers ultimately. Now, if we're not in that place yet, we're not in that place, and we're not holding anybody fault for not being there, but we are pointing to these profound, deep possibilities. So you mentioned that to the extent that we get in touch with this deeper, more refined, highly integrated depth of our being, source, what have you, that does begin to sort of rewire the brain. We build neural circuitry that support being able to live more from that place, to live in a less fear-based, less survival-based, more relational, more receptive, more open-hearted way, right? And so I just want to run something by you here. So in the way I teach and practice meditation, it's what I've been pointing to, this very deeply embodied approach, really, and in particular working with the body as a portal, although you can work with any sense perception. And what I have been discovering, both in my study of neuroscience, but also experientially and in a lot of conversations and through my own practice and working with others, is that although we need to begin any practice with some quality of self-directed self-regulation, right? We're doing something, we have some orientation, but as you said, we're being exposed to billions of bits of information and energy all the time. And at the level, and I think at the energetic level, you would probably say there's basically templates for where we can go. But in terms of the brain and the neural circuit, the brain is a learning machine. And so by being awake and present with this much deeper interoceptive awareness, I feel that we're developing like an internal neurobiofeedback loop where our system, maybe it's part of connecting to these more deeper energetic templates that are pre-existing, but it's also the brain learning to auto-regulate itself into deep attention stabilization and in profound states of awareness and into this level of being. So we need to do less self-direction and more our system is learning to auto-regulate itself, and thus we're developing the the circuitry to more easily find ourselves in that place and to more live from that place. Does that make sense to you from your work?
100%. Absolutely. It is about referencing what is happening in the internal workings of our system and learning the language of the body. I kind of think of it like the master system, the energy system, this eternal presence. Truly, energy cannot be created or destroyed, and we are made of energy. And so, if you really think about it, we are pure awareness, energy that's awake. And we've compressed ourselves into a body, and we are that energy. And so the more we can get the mind to pay attention to the inner energetic realm, the more it's going to get in touch with a greater truth that is not clouded or jaded by the belief systems and the thinkings and the conclusions that perhaps we prematurely drew when we were externally oriented trying to survive. If we're coming from a place of survival because we're dispersed and, living out here in the outer world and trying to figure out, am I safe and do I fit in and all of that, we draw conclusions pretty readily that say, that's not okay, that's not safe, I have to avoid that, those are bad people, I have to get away from that. And we create a pretty small reality for ourselves. And so ultimately that creates pain. And I feel that even then we eventually are forced inward. Right now, our culture is being forced inward because we don't know if we should believe this or we should believe that, or these people are calling these people liars, and it's just crazy. And so what I've heard more in the last 5 years, in the last 3 years in particular, is people saying, I don't know what to believe. So I'm just going to have to go with what I feel. I'm going to have to just trust myself. I'm just going to have to, at the end of the day, do what I feel is right. And they're starting to use this kind of language. And so I feel that this energetic wisdom that is what we really are, pure consciousness, pure awareness, eternal consciousness packed into a body is allocated deep in the core, in the receding aspects of our being, kind of like still waters run deep, that the depth of our being is located there. And so the more we reference that, the more we're able to draw upon this deeper wisdom, a deeper truth, a deeper knowing than what is, babbling at the surface of the river. And so by doing so, we are allowing the reference point to be deeply seated in our inner workings. And when we take actions based on that, we start to set up new neural pathways, or at least activate the ones that are there that perhaps have been shut down in moments of survival, or they've never even been turned on, because we were raised in an environment that never allowed one to trust themselves. And so as these start to rearrange in their prioritization and their utilization, new sequences of synapses start to hit the brain, and the brain starts to respond immediately to that because it wants to learn, and it migrates toward what consumes the least amount of energy. And it takes less energy if we stop worrying than it does to continue to worry and to contract the musculature of fight or flight and to do all the things that we do to survive. So as soon as we start perceiving ourselves as in touch with a greater wisdom, the fight or flight starts to decline. The trap door between the conscious and the subconscious starts to open up. And those two areas of the brain start talking to each other again, which they were originally supposed to be doing. But when we get overwhelmed in life, we start shutting down. And what shuts down so often is the connection between the thalamus and the hypothalamus. And that happens to be the parts of the brain that allow us to match what we see in the outer world with what we feel in our inner world. And when we can't navigate the relationship there, it sets up even more fight or flight. If I feel one thing, but I see something totally different, I don't feel like I belong. I don't feel like I fit in. I feel completely unsafe. And I start kicking in the chemistry of prepare for a bear because I know there's one just around the corner. And so what we're wanting to do is get that trap door open again so that we can make rational sense and be creative when the inner feeling doesn't match the outer environment, and bring forward solution rather than just shut down and try to survive the dissonance that we're experiencing. And so I totally concur with you that reaching inward is how we're going to create new sets of circuits, or turn on new sets of circuits, I should say, and allow a different reference point to be known by our systems.
Well, I love the way you're connecting the full spectrum from, quantum reality, which is pretty wonky. Every time you look at it, it's different. Things like non-locality, bilocality, as you said, it shows up as a wave or a particle, depending on what we're looking for, all the way to, more tangible neurophysiology, right? You're really connecting up the full breadth of that. I love that. And just again, to illuminate a little bit of this deeper quantum reality, and connecting it to science, you mentioned the kind of subatomic level, the quantum level before. As far as I understand, one of the most essential things that can show up as a particle or wave are photons, which is light. And so at the deepest level, we're light beings. That's what we are. I mean,
yes,
we're
indeed.
Consciousness, but you could even, we're light beings, right?
Yes, indeed.
That's not some kind of woo-woo concept. That's reality. That's science. And
yes.
We generally tend to think of science in a more mechanical way, but that's actually science. So,
yes.
Yeah,
it's so interesting. I just want to pop this right in. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but science is even showing us that we don't even walk on the earth, but we walk on a pad of light.
Yeah.
Energy between our foot and the earth, and that plants don't even grow in the earth, but there is light around the roots, that they're not even actually touching the earth. They're growing in the light. It's fascinating to think about. These things are proven, and yet the mass consciousness is just not informed about these things, and everyone's a little slow in the uptake to change what we believe to be true when it comes to such tangible things as the earth we walk on, and the foods that we eat, and all of this, that we could relate that to being made of light is kind of perplexing to the mind. But it is a reality that's being shown to us, and we are certainly being invited to update our perspectives. And I think that we would heal faster if we did.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the profound experiences, either very practically helpful experiences we can have when we are able to even rest for a moment in this deeper state of being, some kind of pure awareness, pure consciousness. Often, the insight arises that, any sense of me or a self or somebody who's having that experience pops up. We really clearly see it, just another thought construct. And, that's pretty illuminating, that this whole narrative and drama of me that I've been living for all these years is basically kind of an unnecessary thought added on top of this experience of pure awareness. But nonetheless, it happens, and it weaves all of our life suffering. So we do, as part of our human journey, we get individuated, and we in our early years, we have to develop a separate self-structure because we're not ready to deal with this kind of level of reality at that point. And that self-structure can be, pretty high functioning, but essentially it's still fear-based in a sense, to ward off that experience of the vastness and groundlessness we're not prepared to experience as infants. Or if our upbringing was not so benevolent, that self-structure can have some kinks and gnarly stuff, and it can cause us quite a few problems in life. But the journey here is beginning to, let go of our hold on that. I mean, as long as we're alive in a body, it's not like we're going to start floating around as undifferentiated light beings. I mean, maybe we will, but I mean, but not having a bigger orientation than that, and then at the same time being able to live and function with a body. So what are some of the ways, I know you talk about how we separate. What are some of the practices and techniques you offer for beginning to let go of that separation and return to this deeper state of integration? So maybe you could talk about the practical level of some of the methodologies and practices and so forth that you offer.
Sure. One of the things that I really work with people initially with it's what I call this quantum flip, where we're kind of reversing the process. It's like people are those that are becoming curious about this energy and wanting to seek some kind of awareness of that, or a greater awakening, or a liberation, or enlightenment, even to go so far as I remind them that we're made of the light that we're seeking. Once we start on this quest, it's like you're made of the very thing that you're looking for. So it's going to be tough to find it. And I feel that that's why people don't find it, because they're looking for something that's already behind their eyes. It's already on the inside, and they're out here, externalizing. And so I focus on, instead of trying to seek enlightenment that's up there, over there, out there in some bigger fashion, turn your attention to embodiment. And so I get them, into an understanding that we are this energy that has chosen to come all the way into the physical dimension and to take on a human form and to engage here in the physical dimension for a reason. And the body has a lot to do with the physical world. It's the physical world version of us. And so if you learn how to come into your body more, because most people live in their heads, or they live out here in this theoretical, into the mental body of energies that are bigger than the physical body, and they're not really living in their physicality. And so I get them doing practices to feel inside the body more regularly and to anchor themselves there. And so I teach them these 4 anchor points that they can work with to land themselves in their physicality. And it is amazing what begins to happen for people just with that first step of recognizing, oh my gosh, I didn't even know that I wasn't living in my body, because I can move my body and I can play, pickleball with it, or I could go rowing or whatever. So I feel like I'm here. But when I start asking, the questions that you're posing that I ponder, I actually can't feel the answers. And so we get them working with, finding this central channel, because the energy moves in the body in a toric field fashion. So in other words, measurable energy is known to come down through the crown of the head, right down through the center of the body and into the earth. And then it hits the earth, and it gets transduced to kind of step down for human consumption, is how I reference it. And then it rises straight back up out the body, comes out the crown of the head, comes around the outside of the body, comes back in at the tip of the spine, and it constantly recycles and recycles. And it's always being replenished, and it's always hitting the earth. In fact, I have a picture. Could I just show a little picture here that I use?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. So this is something that I use when I'm teaching, and it shows how this energy descends right down through the body, hits the earth, and is stepped down, and then it rises up again, and it recycles and recycles. And that's the way that we're functioning. The physical body is built inside of this process that happens in the developing embryo. This is happening in the developing embryo, and it is the information system that is creating a body of energies that can build and build and build the physical body inside of it. And that's how it would function in its ideal. And here's how most people are functioning. The energy is coming down, hitting the earth, rising up, and it's going around the areas that we have not yet claimed, that we're not awakened to, that we're not grounded in our selfness. We're not grounded in the fact that we belong, or these kinds of things, or we're not tapping in our own creativity, or we don't have our personal power in place, or we don't have our voice, activated in such a manner that we can speak our truth or manifest things or go for it in those sorts of ways. And so this rising energy has to go around where we have the electromagnetic flow happening and where we don't have it happening. And so that wobble that it picks up creates a distortion in this energy field. Now, this individual is standing here looking out through a distorted, reality, and they see things differently because of it. And this is how it works on this energetic level. This person is standing here looking out through a perfected clear lens, and they see things as they are. This one's going to distort them to confirm whatever beliefs they're housing that have shut down some of these things, or these things maybe have never come online, et cetera. So one of the practical things that we can do basically is learn how to anchor ourselves right here so that we can have more of a rearranging, a potency. We can have more of an impact on this wobble that's gotten created, and still it, and allow it to flow through areas that it previously was moving around. And so these different areas of the body that I was referencing also represent the chakras, which we know house levels of consciousness. They are aspects of our wholeness. So they are aspects of our ability to know the truth about who we are, kind of the things that we're speaking about here today. They house the creative capacity. They house our personal power. They house our unconditionality. They house our ability to make happen what we can envision. And if we're diverting around some of those qualities, then it's no wonder that we're suffering and we're not healing as quickly as we could, and we're not seeing the possibility or the potential. And so I'm teaching people how to anchor in the body. And I just noticed this other little poster that I could show that shows us some anchor points that I use that show people how to get down in the body. So one that's very simple right here, right behind the heart space, is just pull your shoulder blades together and drop them down. By doing that, there are ligamentous connections from the actual physical heart and the spine. And so it stabilizes that, but it's even bigger than that. It has a stabilizing effect on the energy flow through the body at that level. Another big one, and this one's huge to do, and the effects are immense. It's called Mula Bandha. Again, it's an Eastern Sanskrit term that is referencing the word root lock. So it's locking you at the root of your being, your body, your spine, and keeping you from floating back up like a helium balloon and getting out untethered and ungrounded. And then the mind gets frantic under those circumstances. And so we ground our experience by coming down into the body. So I can teach us how to do this. It'll just take me about 30 seconds or 45 or so to go over that. Do we have time for that?
Please do. Please do.
Okay. So it's kind of an interesting thing, but it is very effective. So we know belly breathing is very helpful. So even if you don't get what I'm about to describe or can't do it right away, if you'll continue to belly breathe instead of breathing in the upper lobes of your lungs when you inhale, you're going to draw your breath lower in the body, and it will activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which balances the sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight. It balances. When you breathe in the belly, it balances fight or flight versus creative wisdom. So when we draw the breath low in the belly, it also pulls the oxygen to the lower lobes of the lungs, which are more innervated with the parasympathetic, relaxed, creative genius nerve endings part of the autonomic nervous system. But it also has more blood vessels there. So you oxygenate your bloodstream faster, which sends another signal to the brain that says, okay, all is well. We can relax. We're okay. Because when we run out of oxygen, there's a whole nother emergency at hand. So that's something you can do if this practice I'm about to say is like, oh, I'm trying and I can't feel it. Also keep in mind, if you're trying and you can't feel it, then you've probably been living up in your head more and coming down into the body by working with this for a few days until it starts to come online. Usually within 3 days, anybody can get this. And a lot of people get it right away. So it's like this. We're working with the muscles in the base of the pelvic bowl, way down here in the perineum. And so at the base of the pelvic bowl, there is musculature that you would contract. If you were going to the bathroom and you had to stop the stream right away, you would contract certain muscles to do that. So this is kind of an overview way to start to work with Mula Bandha, root lock. You contract those muscles as if you were stopping the stream right now. And then contract them with everything you've got, and then relax them by 1/2, and then relax them again by 1/2 of that. And just with a little bit of tension there, here's what happens. If you're driving down the road and you're upset about what happened at work today, or you're upset about something your kids are doing, or whatever the case may be, and you find yourself up in it emotionally, if you will contract Mula Bandha by contracting those muscles at the base of the pelvic bowl, it pulls you down into your rootedness, into your groundedness. And here's what will happen. You will not be able to get as upset as you were just a moment ago, because something else is in the mix. We're stirring grounded root chakra energies, which correlate to your knowingness that all is well, and that this too shall pass, and that this is just a project that we're in, and we're here trying to wake ourselves up at some level that we weren't before. And so by squeezing Mula Bandha and squeezing the shoulder blades together and dropping them down, and then breathing in the belly together, it is a wonderful way to start to cultivate a sense of well-being. Another thing that I teach people is to start to breathe up and down this whole central channel. And so when we do that, we're starting to move that energy through here in a conscious and intentional manner. And when that happens, it starts sending different signals to the brain, because everything is energy, and the brain is constantly receiving energetic nerve impulses in the form of chemistries and neurosynapses. And so when it's receiving something that's more harmonized and more balanced, it starts the process of saying, okay, check, 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 check. We can relax, 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 relax. All these things that are, plugged in to allow us to survive a tiger or a bear. Tiger's gone, bear is gone, let's relax. And the trap door opens up, and these areas of the brain that are essential for us maintaining health and well-being are able to do their job again. So just to review that, it would be pulling your shoulder blades together and dropping them down, contracting these muscles in the base of the pelvic bowl. That is the same as if you were going to the bathroom and you had to stop the stream, just contracting them. And then taking a belly breath, breathing in the belly, not in the upper lobes of the lungs. Belly first, inhale and exhale, and inhale and exhale. So I can take a big inhale correctly right now, and you won't even see my shoulders move. Big inhale. And here's how to do it wrong. And that's how most people were taught to breathe. So something as simple as dropping the breath below the diaphragm starts to stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system in a totally different way, and starts to harmonize things that allow us to increase creativity, decrease fight or flight, and start to bring a greater balance into the system. Then new synapses start firing, and new things start to couple, firing together and wiring together. And pretty soon we have a new we have a new autopilot kind of running the show. And then lastly, let me just cover this central channel breath, since I mentioned it. This is literally as if you could take a breath through the top of your head and breathe in from overhead through the center of the brain, through the throat, to the heart, into the belly breath that you're doing. So you would inhale down to the belly, and then squeeze that mula bandha again, and exhale right through it, right into the earth. And then inhale up from the earth, right through those contracted muscles, right up into the belly. And then exhale right up out through the top of up through the upper body and out the top of the head. And so you're inhaling to the core and exhaling out one end, inhaling up to the core, and then exhaling out the other end. And by doing that, people literally are carving a pathway for more stabilized energy. And that energy system built the nervous system. It's going to have an effect on the nervous system. It's more predominant. And so the nervous system starts to respond, because those little cells are picking up with their antennas all over the body. Every cell in the body is picking up with their little antennas on the surface of the cell a harmonized environment. And it sends then harmonizing chemistries up through the system, which filter up through the brain in our heart, which is another thing we didn't get to speak about, but it's there, and up to the brain in our head. So the brain in our gut and the brain in our heart and the brain in our head get to start working together. And the nerve system records what's happening so that it can repeat it and reproduce it and reproduce it. And it acts as a laboratory and a library all at the same time, giving us new references for a state of well-being. Even when our environment isn't delivering it for us, we can start to create a new reality in our internal world, regardless of what's going on in our external circumstances. So I'll stop there and see where we want to go.
Well, that is so incredibly helpful. And I love that you gave us some practical exercises to do. And that you're connecting really the full breadth from quantum reality, quantum science, to yogic science, to the neurophysiology of our autonomic nervous system. I mean, it's so clear and so incredibly helpful. And, we're kind of nearing the end of our time today, but I want, I know you have this 7-step system, and you have some really wonderful programs to offer people, and full of really practical experiential training. I know you draw from yoga and breath work, pranayama, and so forth, lots of different sources. So where can people find out more about your work and about your programs, Dr. Sue?
Oh, I'm pretty easy to find. My website is drsuemorter.com. So it's drsuemorter.com. And we have all sorts of online classes and some in-person healing events and a variety of things. People can get involved on any level. We have some free courses that we're always offering, and some deep dive things that are available as well. Teaching people everything from self-healing techniques to working with others with bioenergetics and as a practitioner, and also meditation and a body awake yoga course that I teach that is teaching people how to anchor this consciousness in the core of the body when we're putting the body through yoga asanas, because yoga asanas, the positions that we put the body in during yoga, put the body in positions that allow the energy to move more freely. And so it frees it up, energy that gets blocked into pockets and packages where we've decided that we weren't safe, or that grudge from the family or the culture or the wrongdoings that have occurred seemingly in our lives. They create packages of synapses that also block energy. So it frees up that energy more easily, which is why yoga has stood the test of time. And I'm bringing back into it how to anchor your consciousness in the core of the body where we belong, something that I feel kind of got lost in the shuffle over the millennia of handing yoga forward into modern day yoga. So there's lots there. You don't have to be a yogi to do all the things that I do, but it's another avenue. There's something there for many, many different walks of life that have found a lot of solutions in putting these pieces together this way.
Wonderful. And people can always check out your book, The Energy Codes, the 7-step system to awaken your spirit, heal your body, and live your best life.
Yes,
thank you so much for your time today and everything you've shared with us, Dr. Sue. Just invaluable, fascinating. I'm so looking forward to following up more with your work myself, and just incredibly practical and empowering and enlightening, and just expands, a sense of what the whole thing is really all about and what the possibilities are. So just so grateful for you being part of our summit. Thank you very much.
It's my great joy. Thank you for having me. And, it's my greatest joy to simplify all these beautiful studies that are out there in all of the different departments of the sciences, and bringing it together in a way that hopefully we can help lots of people. So thank you for what you're doing and bringing us all together in this way, Fleet, and for what you've been doing for so many years. You're such a respected individual in the world. And so it's really wonderful to be here with you. Thank you.
Thank you. You be well.